Hello, everyone. Good day, Mike. For the friends from USA, I know it's now evening in California, but I still want to say good day, Mike, because today's topic is Australia. I'm today's master of ceremony. My name is Min Hong Chen. You can call me Min. I'm now living in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. I'm serving as secretary in this association. Last month, we had a very successful webinar as our first event. If you missed that event or want to listen again, you can find the video in OTEA website. That's otea.network. Maybe some people are not clear. What is the purpose to set up this association? Please allow me to explain in my words. Overseas Taiwanese Engineer Association, OTEA, is established for two major purposes. Number one, for some people has an intention to work overseas. The members in the association can share many useful and valuable information for your reference. I can tell you this type of successful cases. Number two, for some people want to contact some organization in other country, but lack of connection. The members in the association may be able to help to introduce you to the organization you want to visit. I can tell you this type of successful cases as well. There are some housekeeping remarks to announce before we are getting started. First of all, you can see the recording light on your screen at the top left-hand side is on. Yes, the webinar is recorded from the very beginning to the end of presentation. The recording will stop after the presentation. Then the speaker will be interviewed by the moderator first, and then it's the Q&A session. Please turn off your microphone to help us receiving a better quality of recording. You are welcome to raise your question for the presentation. Please put your question in chat box. The moderator will bring up your question to the speaker, and the speaker will answer your question in Q&A session. Let's have a group photo. If you want to join our group photo for this event, please turn on your camera. The group photo will be used for our event record and for the promotion in the future. Okay, let's take a photo now. Okay, let's start to do the business. Today, we have two founding members to be our moderator and the speaker. Our moderator is Victor Lee from New Zealand. Dr. Lee is General Manager at Anson Construction Company. Anson is based in Auckland, and Anson specializes in the delivery of residential and commercial projects. Prior to joining Anson, Victor also participated in several mega projects in Malaysia and Taiwan, such as the Forest City, which is 10 square kilometers, the Reclamation Island project, and the JDT Stadium, whose capacity is 50,000 seats, and with FIFA standard facility in Malaysia. Before working in overseas, Victor ever served in CECI, and he also participated in several important infrastructure projects such as Wanda MRT project, and some deep excavation, tunnel, and slope engineering design projects in Taiwan. Dr. Lee draws on more than 10 years of management, engineering, and construction experience in the consultant and the property development industry. Dr. Lee is the registered professional geotechnical engineer in Taiwan and a registered APEC engineer and an international professor engineer. Erwin Oh is our speaker today. He is from Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia, my neighbor. Dr. Oh is an associate professor at Griffith University. May I ask Victor to help to introduce Dr. Oh to audience? Victor, please.
Thank you, Min Hong, and thank you, everyone. I'm Victor Lee. Now I'm working for Anson, and thanks for Ming's introduction. And it's my pleasure to be the moderator for this event. Also, I'm looking forward to have more interactive and learning with you today. So following, let me introduce today's speaker, Dr. Erwin Oh. Erwin Oh is not only the associate professor in civil engineering, but also the director international for Greece University, Australia. Erwin also has been involved in Australian engineering industry for many years and has a good reputation and prestige. Dr. Oh had previously served as a chairman for Engineers Australia Gold Coast Regional Group and chairman for Queensland chapter of Australian Geomechanic Society. Okay, so I don't want to waste too much time in my part. So let's welcome to Dr. O. Yeah, please.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to some part of you in different part of the world. So my name is Erwin. Thank you, Min Hong, and thank you, Victor, for the introduction. Today, I'll share a little bit of my experience with where I achieved when I moved to Australia from Taiwan back in 2002. So just a little bit of experience that what I've experienced too in getting my skill recognized in Australia, and also to share a little bit of what are the job prospects in Australia as an engineer. So I'll share my slides. So I put the title, it's called Embrace the Energetic Engineering Career in Australia, because I do find that engineer in Australia is very, very different, because Australia itself, it is a country that has welcomed many different migrants from different parts of the world. So this is one of the photos that I've taken that I took back in 2006 when I was involved in a project which was building a tunnel next to the Gold Coast Airport. Well, because this is just to give everyone a context of where we are located, because I think everyone comes from different part of the world. So Australia is located here, which is in the southern hemisphere. So basically in northern hemisphere, you're now experiencing a hot summer, whereas we are now experiencing our winter, which is very, very mild over here. So Australia itself, to give you a little bit of geography, Australia has 6 states and 2 territories. So Min Hong and I, we live in southeast part of Queensland, which is in the Brisbane and the Gold Coast over here. And Australia has Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, Western Australia, and Tasmania as states, and 2 territories. One is the Northern Territory and one is the Capital Territory. So basically Canberra is the capital of Australia. And then this is where I'm located, in close to Brisbane and the city called Gold Coast. And to put it in a different context is Australia has roughly about close to 26 million in the population. But there are a big number of them, because if you look at the statistic that we have, this is based on the Australian Statistics Bureau. Back in June 30th of June 2020, there was roughly about 7.6 migrants living in Australia. This 7.6 means that these are migrants that are born overseas, but then move to Australia after they were born. So if we look at that, 29.8% of Australia's population were born overseas, and then Australian population increased by 194,000 because due to overseas migration. Therefore, Australia is open to migration, that we have a large number of people moving to Australia from different parts of the world. And there's a boom. There's a very, very shortage of engineers. this is an government website. If you are interested, you can type in infrastructureaustralia.gov.au. Then you can link to where there are proposals that are now putting into building the infrastructures in Austria. For example, you can see that there are a large number of infrastructures in New South Wales, 43 proposals they are now looking into, and then 25 in Queensland. And then to put it in a different context, once you have that, then you can see that those are the values with the different infrastructure projects. For example, in Queensland, they are now looking into upgrading the Bruce Highway, which is a very, very important motorway connecting from Brisbane up to Cairns. And then there are infrastructures that they are putting, the government is investing to upgrade the railways and highways in New South Wales, Victoria, and different parts of Australia. So this will give you a little bit of context, the need of civil engineers, mechanical, and electrical engineers that are needed in Australia. This is another news article that you can find, which is published in Enjoy Australia. This gives you an idea that there's alarming STEM shortage of skill shortage, because in Australia, many of the high school graduates, they would prefer to study different areas like medicines or social science or business. Not many of them, they would choose some engineering-related degree. Therefore, this is a shortage that has been highlighted by the Engineer Australia. The other one is this is a news that was published several days ago, about 4 days ago. That is there's a parliamentary committee that recommends that easing the pathway for skilled migrant workers, because Australia has closed its border due to COVID. Therefore, there are things that they want more engineers to come, or skilled workers to come to Australia. Therefore, they are now looking into those discussions. This is just to pay the context to give you an idea, and then plus many of those articles that showing that companies employ international engineers because there is a skill shortage of engineers in Australia. This is a photo that I've taken. So basically, when I was in that project, I enjoy working with different mechanical engineers, scientists as well, because many of the scientists that they conduct a lot of those environmental monitoring. And then I do find that working on those projects, you work in a great team and a very, very big team. So this is one of the tunnel that I was involved in when we were expanding the runway for the airport, because on the top, after the tunnel was constructed, there was a runway that was on the top of that particular tunnel. So what happened next? Okay, so that gives you a context of what is needed. Okay, why Australia needs a lot of skilled migrants. Then that comes to if you have an engineering degree, okay, then these are the things that you probably can look into the options, because in terms of skill assessment, many of those skill assessments are being authorized by the government and then they authorize a certain non-profit organizations that administers those skill assessment. For example, as engineers, many of our skills are being assessed by Engineer Australia. If you type in Engineer Australia, that leads you to a website. Okay, this website is formerly named as the Institute of Engineer Australia, where it administers the membership of engineers, but also it administers the chartership. Okay, the chartership, which if it requires to register yourself as a professional engineer, then you need to go through the chartered assessment, which is administered by Engineer Australia. Once you get the chartership, then you can then be eligible to register yourself to become the NPER, which is through the National Professional Engineers Registrar. And then there's another one that is in Queensland. It's the only state in Australia that requires an independent registration. Therefore, if you need to practice in Australia as an engineer, you need to also register yourself as the RPEQ, which is named as Registered Professional Engineers, Registered Professional Engineers Queensland. So there are many websites that to give you an idea that those are the engineering in demand no difference to those is Australia has a very shortage of engineers. So if you type in Engineer Australia, there's a particular web link that gives you the link for you as a migrant, or for many of us as a migrant that we moved to Australia to conduct a migration skill assessment. So basically, based on those links, when you click on those, it gives you the link to what the options that you have. You can also engage different agents, but to give you an idea is if you click on that migration skill assessment, then this gives you the context, because Engineer Australia, it has a very good system. Is they have a very it's based on competencies base that you have to exhibit your competencies that you meet those requirements. Then once you meet those requirements, they will issue you a certification that you met that particular professional area. For example, myself, I'm a civil engineer, therefore I have to apply to that civil engineering assessment. Once I've completed that, then I would receive a letter from Engineer Australia indicating that I have the skill as a civil engineering profession, or a professional engineers that specialize in civil engineering. So once you go into that, okay, there are different options as well. Particularly now is a global context. Plus Australia itself is a signatory of Washington Accord. Therefore, for many of those who have completed their degree in Taiwan, they can also look into the options by choosing their assessment pathway, because Taiwan has signed as a member, as a part of the Washington Accord, to have the skill being recognized mutually. And then that is true, signing that process is you can then go to a separate pathway. So once you go into that, okay, there are step-by-step guidelines that you can use, okay. So basically, you can read through the booklet, okay. There's a very informative booklet that has been published by Engineer Australia. So once you click on that, then it will give you the whole booklet in a PDF version. In that particular PDF file, you can understand what the options that you have to conduct your skill assessment. You can look at the pathway that you have, and then there's a very clear indication of the application guide, how it guides to you your application. If you decided to proceed, then you need to establish an account with Engineer Australia. And then once you log in that, you can then fill in those forms to lodge your application. So there's an application fees, of course. So you can, if you want to understand that a little bit more, you can then look into the link that I've shared in the PowerPoint file as well. That's the bottom, okay, of the where you have the link that you can understand those informations. As mentioned earlier, because Engineer Australia, it is a signatory of Washington Accord. So Washington Accord being established in those 20 years ago, that it has initially started with 6 countries, that is United States, the United Kingdom, Ireland, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. So those are the 6 countries that have established a benchmark of the qualifications and then the competencies of being an engineer. So in this case, if you have a degree that is being recognized, so if you have a degree in Australia, basically is a degree being being accredited by Engineer Australia, then you will move to the next phase, okay, that you can you don't have to complete those competency report. If you have a degree which is being recognized through the Washington Accord, then similarly you can complete those stage forms that you need to submit those applications. Whereas if you have a degree which is not listed in the Washington Accord, in which your the degree that you have, or the degree that you're being awarded by that particular country or the particular institutions, if it is not listed in the Washington Accord, then you can go to a pathway where you need to complete a competency demonstration report. This is what I did back in 2001 when I applied to move to Australia, because that is a competence, because at that time Taiwan is not yet a signatory of Washington Accord. Therefore, I've gone through that particular process that you have to complete those assessments, that you write each of those competencies, you write a paragraph explaining why you have met those competencies. Therefore, just to give you an idea, if you type in the IE agreements, International Engineers Agreements, that's Washington Accord, that you can find these are the countries that are signatory of Washington Accord. And then Taiwan itself is one of the members being signed as Chinese Taipei, which is to the Institute of Engineering Education Taiwan. So that Taiwan has then joined the Washington Accord in 2007. So this is a snapshot of the booklet. Okay, that booklet will give you a very, very clear idea of the steps, the process, the pathway, and then understand the guide and give you guidelines how to establish an account with Engineer Australia. So then the other one that you might be interested, because Australia, again, they've mentioned Australia is open to skilled migrants. Therefore, if you type in the Home Affairs, okay, in this Home Affairs, there are lists of skilled occupational lists that is published by the Australian government. They list down the skill shortage that is needed. So once you type in that one, you can find that it is being listed as the Australian and New Zealand standard classification of occupations. Those are the occupation being listed. So if you type in those search in this particular website, for example, if you type in civil engineering, then it comes up with the building engineering and civil engineering draftsmen and civil engineers. So these are being the skill shortage, and these are the relevant visa that these particular professions can look into. For example, being a civil engineers, the options you can look at are skill regional visas, and then some skill sponsors or skill employer sponsors or skill work regional visa. Those are the options that you can look into applying those visas to come here to work as a building and engineering technicals or as a civil engineers. So there are also many of those. You can look into the skill migration program informations. These to give you an idea of what are the visa options which are listed over here. So particularly each of those visa, they will have criteria and conditions. Many of those visas are based on a point scale. So therefore, those are the information that you can find here. For example, if you have a degree which is not from an English-speaking country, for example, you have a bachelor degree that you have a Bachelor of Engineering degree that you have completed in Taiwan. Therefore, the first step for you before your application is to undertake an English test. So those English tests are, for example, like IELTS. Okay, IELTS is one being fully recognized in Australia, that you must take that IELTS test to show your English competencies before you submit your application to Engineer Australia or submit your applications for the skill migrations. So this will give you the context about how you can conduct your skill assessment being recognized in Australia, but also the type of visa that is available for skilled migrants. This will give you an idea about the upcoming jobs in Australia, because in Australia there's a government statistic department that they look at the jobs that are being published. It's called joboutlook.gov. To give you another context is, if you look at a report published by the Engineer Australia in 2019, this is a report that they look at the needed skilled professions or engineering profession in Australia. If you look at that, you can find that every year Australia awards roughly about 20,000 visas to engineers, to skilled engineers. Therefore, these are the statistics that's been published and published in 2019. So there are those information that you can find, then you know that, okay, there is a need for engineers in Austria. Therefore, those are typical number of visa being awarded to skilled migrants as a professional engineers. Then to give you another context is these are the increase of civil engineering needed civil engineers in Australia. So starting in 2014, there's roughly about 39,000 civil engineering jobs, but the statistics that were published back in 2019 up to the financial stats that I have is there's roughly 56,000 civil engineering vacancies of civil engineering jobs in Australia. Now, this is the Australian government website. So they are projecting the growth because the growth that is needed for infrastructures and many other projects. Therefore, they're projecting for the next 5 years, in 2024, there'll be roughly about 68,000 engineering jobs, civil engineering jobs that is needed in Australia. The another idea is, okay, this is a statistic also from the Australian government. This is the average, okay, weekly income for typical jobs. So as a civil engineers, the average job income is roughly about 1,900 per week, 1,900 Australian dollars. Another one is there's also a need for construction managers, projecting roughly about 94,000 construction managers are needed in Australia in 2024. And then construction managers are very needed, and then they have high salary as well. So if you look at this gives you an idea about a civil construction manager's salary is roughly about 3,400 per week. There's also a strong demand for architects and building technicians or surveying technical technicians as well, projecting the growth to 92,000 jobs in 2024. And then electrical engineers is also in a demand that as well that is needing. And then those are all driven by the infrastructures, but also many of those are driven by the mining projects in Australia, because Australia itself is a country that export a lot of the raw materials. So for example, if you look at Australia, there are many of those oil and gas mining projects, and then the coal mining projects and iron ore mining projects. Yes, there are some context saying that yes, there are lesser demand now if in terms of the oil and gas, but there are still other countries that are importing those raw materials from Australia. So therefore, those mining projects, they need many of those civil engineers or mechanical engineers to build those temporary infrastructures to give them access to ports and building temporary access railways or roads that allows them to transport those raw materials. This is typically in Australia, they do look at the annual salary. So this is also a statistic published in Australia is if for graduates, okay, this is for those engineers that they've just completed a degree. For example, civil engineers, for those graduates, typically they would earn a annual salary of roughly about 71,000 Australian dollars. So mechanical roughly 72, electrical roughly 75. Now these are typically an annual salary for a basic fresh graduates that they don't have an experience at all. So these are a lot the top 15 highest paying Australian engineering jobs. Okay, software civil engineers ranked number 2. Because civil engineers, as once you have those experience, your pay increases. So basically, to give you another idea is, okay, if you need to, okay, you might consider yourself moving into different countries. Australia, you might need to consider about your English, your skills, the living, the safety, the environment, the careers, and then the application process. I live in Queensland. It's a mild, very, very mild place. Okay, mild weather. Winter is roughly about 9 to 21 degrees. Summer is fantastic. It's not that hot. and then you have good public transport. And finishing off, this is a photo of Gold Coast, where this is one of the tallest structure in Australia called Q1 Tower. So this is a beautiful beach side that we normally enjoy ourselves, and this is where we name this place called Surfers Paradise. Thank you.
Thank you for your excellent speech. I think all the audience already looking for have some question to Dr. Erwin. May we give the microphone back to the MC, Ming Hong.
Okay. Thank you, Erwin. Thank you, Victor. Oh, fantastic speech. Do you consider moving to Austria now? Due to the time limitation, we have to finish the formal session in a few minutes. Our monthly webinar is set on the third Sunday in each month. And the next event will be on 19th September. The next event in September is, let me share my screen. Yeah. The next topic is Introduction to USA Construction Project Organization and the Civil Engineer Career Path. In the third event, we will have Edward Wong from USA to be MC, and Tony Xian from New Zealand to be a moderator. Wen Huang will give us a presentation in this title. You can scan the QR code to join this webinar. Now, it's my honor to invite Wen Huang to have a short introduction to his speech. Wen Huang, please.
Hi, everyone. Oh, hold on. I got the alarm setting down on me. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for all Taiwanese engineers around the globe. And it's my honor to give the presentation next month. And the topic that I'm going to cover next month would be the introduction to the U.S. Construction Project Organization and the Civil Engineer Career Path. And it'll be about 30-minute presentation. And well, I'd like to introduce a little bit about myself. I got my bachelor degree in Taiwan in civil engineering in 1994. And then after that, after 2 years of military service, then I came over to United States for my study and my work, and also living here in the past 25 years. So almost half of my life has been spent in the United States. I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area, North California. So in the next month's topic, I would like to cover about a little bit about my experience in civil engineering in the United States, especially with my specialty in construction management. And also, anytime we talk about a career path, it's always important to have an introduction to any construction project organization, right? From the perspective of the owner, designer, and construction manager, and the contractors. So I'm going to cover those in my presentation, and as well as the some of the requirement to work in the U.S. and also whether any tips and tricks about how to present yourself, and then in terms of the academic degrees, how to put up your resume if you are interested in searching a job in the U.S. And also, I'm gonna quickly run through the some of the procedure to get the permit to work in the United States, and then a little bit introduction about professional licenses and certification, and also the affiliations in the United States, in addition to OTEA. And also, I also share my past 25 years of the work experience, and also some of my, whether it's a cultural, technical, or political experience that I have in the United States. So it'll be something interesting to see. And it's very different. I listened to the presentation today. What's happening in the southern hemisphere is actually quite different from what we have in Northern Hemisphere, especially in the US and in California. So I'm gonna cover those, and then everybody can compare about your choices around the globe. So that would be my topic. So hope to see you guys on the September 19th, 11 a.m. Taiwan time. Hi.
Okay, thanks, Wen. Okay, before you go, if you want to become our member, please submit your membership application to OTEA website. If you have any comment about today's webinar, please share us your idea by filling out the post survey. Yeah, that's our post-event survey form. And if you need a training certificate for today's webinar, please send your request to OTEA email account. You can find this link in the chat box, I think so. If you still want to ask more questions to Dr. Oh, you are welcome to stay in this meeting room after our official event. I believe Dr. Oh will be happy to answer all of your questions, even in Chinese. Today's webinar is finished. Thank you very much and see you next time.